AccuWeather forecast. I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg for News Talk 1480 WHBC.
Live from the studios of News Talk 1480 WHBC, it's Kenny and JT.
Big news over the weekend. Cavaliers make a big trade 2 years in a row. Last year, they traded for DeAndre Hunter. This year, they trade DeAndre Hunter for Dennis Schroeder, Keon Ellis, and Emmanuel Miller. How they were able to do that based on the so-called second apron, I don't know. Maybe our next guest, JT, can explain this to us. Outstanding senior writer at hoopswire.com. Follow him at Amico Hoops on Twitter. Sam Amico joining us right now. Sam, how were they able to pull this off if they were in the second apron and they didn't trade one player for one player, dollar for dollar?
Well, you can always find a sucker in a team like the Sacramento Kings. I'll start there. Listen, you're able to take back more than one player. You just can't aggregate salaries to get one. So they couldn't have traded DeAndre Hunter and another guy for Dennis Schroeder, for instance. So,
okay.
You know, they did a couple of things here, accomplished a couple of things. They traded a guy who was not a fit this season in Hunter, too much disappearing, too much inconsistency, not the 3-and-D guy they had hoped for when they traded for him a year ago. So that was number one. They got back two guys, one a veteran point guard who actually, even though he's a little undersized, plays both guard spots well. He's been around. The Cavs are his 11th team in 13 seasons, and that's after spending the first 5 years of his career with Dennis Schroeder, or with the Hawks, and I'm talking about Dennis Schroeder. So, you know, Keon Ellis, they potentially see what upside he has, and while doing all this, they managed to shave quite a bit of money off their books, and now, you know, get closer to getting below that second tax apron, which will restore their flexibility when it comes to roster moves. So, you know, in doing all this, they help themselves in a number of areas.
Sam, I have so many questions. First and foremost, this is a great deal in my opinion, because you're right. For whatever reason, we were so excited. We wanted so much more from DeAndre Hunter. We just never saw it. And to me, it was obvious it wasn't going to get different. It wasn't going to change anytime soon. The body language just wasn't there. It was more than just being in a slump. Can you put your finger on the pulse of this thing and wonder what happened to DeAndre Hunter?
You know, sometimes it's hard to tell. I think just sometimes guys get into funks, and it's very difficult for them to get out of those funks. And they feel like, you know, in order to do that, they might need a new situation. I don't think that DeAndre Hunter, you know, we heard his comments a couple weeks ago. He told Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com that he was happy in Cleveland and was just fine here, but just was not the fit that they were hoping for, at least not this year. You know, I think, listen, they made this trade last year for DeAndre Hunter. They wanted somebody to slow down Jason Tatum. Well, the dynamics of the Eastern Conference has changed, you know, with Tatum's injury. And while the Celtics are still playing well, we don't know if that's sustainable with Tatum out. And so your goals are different this year when you're talking about trades and revamping the roster and getting back into becoming a true East contender. You know, if DeAndre Hunter is not going to be at his absolute best, then he's no longer a fit. Why that was, you know, I'm sure there's multiple reasons why he just wasn't a fit this season, but you know, didn't live up to expectations. And if you could shed him, then you know, that's the move you got to make.
Sam Amico, our guest, senior NBA writer at hoopswire.com. And Sam, let's go down a different avenue, if you will. Was this trade made because maybe the injury to Darius Garland is more severe than they're letting on, just like it was last year. And they didn't have a point guard because Lonzo Ball stinks. They got rid of Ty Jerome, so they needed a point guard more than they needed DeAndre Hunter and waiting for him to develop.
I think that there is something too. I don't know that the Darius Garland injury this time is, as severe as it was last season. But I think it's fair to say you're talking about a guy who has had issues staying on the floor in Darius Garland. This has been kind of an ongoing thing since his rookie year. Even in college, he only managed 5 games at Vanderbilt. So when he's out there, obviously valuable, but now we've had 2 toe things in 2 years. I don't know if this is his New Balance sneakers or what it is, but you haven't been able to stay on the floor consistently. Last year against the Pacers, you lost him in the playoffs. Ty Jerome against the Pacers was not good. This adds that Schroeder adds another element to protect yourself if Darius Garland can't stay on the floor. You've got Garland and Schroeder and Craig Porter Jr. And everybody says, what are you going to do with 3 point guards? Well, so often you only have 2 of them if you're lucky half the time. So I think this does protect them, given Darius's track record of, missing time, and it seems to happen every season. And, not necessarily his fault. It's just been that way throughout the course of his young NBA career.
Kenny mentioned it's his 11th team in 13 seasons for you say Schroeder, I say Schroeder. Do we know how to pronounce his kid's name for real?
I've actually talked to some GMs who call him Schrader. So to answer your question, JT, no one really knows. Right. I don't even know if he does.
Good then, because the real question has got to be this. He seems to be under contract for a couple of more seasons. Don't know whether or not the Cavaliers intend to hold on to him. But I've also heard that Keon Ellis is going to be possibly a free agent at the end of the year. Would the Cavaliers look at his deal, and he's not making much, and try to re-sign him for the long haul?
Yeah, he becomes extension eligible February 9th. I doubt that the Cavs are going to give him a new deal then. But certainly, this is a guy who could potentially get an extension and sign a lot. Listen, you're going to wait and see what he does from between now and the end of the season before you probably make a decision on him. How does he fit? How many minutes does he get? Is he this defensive stalwart that he's being promoted as? These are the things that they're going to determine and decide. But sure, if he's, this is a guy who has every reason to play really well and get a new deal. So I think he's kind of the X factor in this trade. Is his performance going to lead to an off-season deal involving Max Strus? I think there are a lot of things that could play out and be determined by how well Keon Ellis is, frankly, the backup to Jalen Tyson. How well is he going to be able to perform? And is that something the Cavs are going to consider this offseason? I would think certainly if he plays well enough.
Couple of things I read on Keon Ellis once this trade was made. He is a free agent at the end of the year. They'll have his bird rights, so they could keep him if they want to and pay him more than anybody else if he performs that way. The other thing I heard about him, Sam, pesky or pain in the ass. Those are 2 ways to describe him for the way he plays. So was this, as much as Dennis Schroeder, whatever his name is a backup to DG, was this a defensive acquisition based on some of the teams they're going to play in rounds 2 and 3 in the Eastern Conference to match up with a Pritchard from Boston, potentially a Jalen Brunson from the New York Knicks, or whoever it might be?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that you made this deal, is because you feel like, you didn't get the defense that you were hoping for out of Hunter. So this gives you an opportunity, presumably or theoretically, to have a guy who's going to do those defensive things. And those those are accurate descriptions. He's pesky. He plays with a lot of energy. He can get under the opponent's skin. That's, Cavs have been missing a guy like that. Certainly, guys, and I've said this since the start of the year, they missed that George Niang, Tristan Thompson edge in the locker room, and even on the court a little bit, where, these are guys who are kind of, you say the Cavs want to add toughness in personality. Well, they just got two guys who do that. And Schrader especially. I mean, listen, this is a guy who took on Luka Doncic, tried to fight him a couple of weeks ago, Dennis Schrader. And Keon Ellis has that same type of toughness and aggressiveness.
Yeah, you're finally playing for a contender, too. And I would imagine that's going to make you want to play a little bit better, and especially when you've got leadership the likes of Donovan Mitchell. Sam Amico, senior writer at hoopswire.com. Sam, does this move in getting out from underneath the $24 million contract of DeAndre Hunter, or are you not totally out of that? Does this get you out of that second apron? And if so, could there be a possibility that maybe they make a move and maybe go after a Giannis?
Yeah. Well, first of all, no, it doesn't get you out of the second apron.
Okay.
You're still about $14 million too high. You could throw, if you can move Lonzo Ball, who has a team option on his contract for next season, which is the same thing as an expiring contract. If you can move Lonzo Ball and maybe, throw in a little bit of salary filler there with, I don't know, a Larry Nance Jr., Thomas Bryant or something, you can get out from under that apron. That, just moving Lonzo Ball alone won't put them under the second apron. But yes, theoretically, I posted this on the website, there are rival teams that think that the Cavs are really trying to get under that second apron. They think that a trade for Giannis this season within the next 4 days before the deadline is an absolute long shot. But these guys know Kobe Altman, and they say we would not rule it out. This is a man who's made 30 trades since 2017, since taking that job. So, the possibility exists that they could get both under the second apron and make a splash. I think it's a long shot that happens. I don't even know that they'll be able to get out from under the apron this season. Certainly the off season they will.
Hey, Donovan was a long shot too, wasn't he?
Absolutely. We all heard he's going to the Knicks, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's it. Donovan's going to the Knicks. Next thing I know, I'm sitting in Panera eating my lunch, and I see Donovan Mitchell's been traded to the Cavs. And I'm like, is this fake news? So that's kind of the Kobe Altman way is, I'm gonna pull the rug out from everybody else and do this thing. So all this stuff I just said, it's a long shot, but I wouldn't totally rule it out.
Let me throw this then your way, Sam. Darius Garland, I've wanted to trade him since the end of last season, but he was hurt then. He's hurt again. I don't know if you can trade a hurt guy. Same with Mobley. Mobley's hurt now. He's got what we call the Chisenhall, the calf injury. Is anybody going to entertain a trade for either one of those guys because they're hurt?
Yeah, I think so. Mobley, not so much, but Garland, because of his history, that price might drive down a little bit. Okay. So that makes a move unlikely because you don't want to trade him for, not nearly enough. But you could still trade Mobley. Listen, people are always going to be interested in the reigning defensive player of the year and a guy with offensive upside that they feel they can truly unleash. Yeah, that's something that isn't going to impact them. The Cavs right now are shooting down anything Mobley, but it's because there's no real offers for him yet. So right. I don't think that they're desperate to move either one of those guys right now. Listen, if the off season, if this season plays out like similarly to last season, then you're really, really having those strong conversations on just about everybody but Mitchell.
Sam, what else are you hearing about the East? I mean, if Giannis isn't dealt to Cleveland, we believe it'll be a long shot if they could do it. But again, anything can happen. Where else do you think he might end up? Could he stay in the East, Giannis Antetokounmpo?
Yeah, that seems to be more of a long shot type of thing too. There's certainly, Miami is always in the mix. I don't know that they have the assets. The Knicks do not have the assets right now. We keep hearing the Knicks linked to Giannis, but they just don't. If the Heat or Knicks want to get involved, they're going to have to hope that Giannis is still in Milwaukee after the trade deadline. It's really the teams out west that, listen, the Warriors are really going to try to make a strong move for him. They've been very aggressive in trying to get him. Might be tough for them to do that given their assets. I would think if San Antonio wants him, they've got everything you need. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, they've got young players. They've got tons of picks. Oklahoma City's not, as far as I know, not involved, but that's a team with unlimited assets if they wanted to go out and get him. So I think he's probably more likely to be moved during the off season. But again, this is the NBA, and Luka Doncic got traded for, next thing. So I would say all is possible between now and Thursday.
All right, Sam. Donovan Mitchell, 7th straight All-Star game for him. A lot of people thought he should have been a starter, didn't get that, but he gets voted in and very deserving. Just your thoughts on what he's been able to do, but will it not matter until he gets out of that second round of the playoffs? He can go to 10 straight All-Star games, but if he can't get out of the second round, nobody's going to care.
Yeah, that's, listen, there have been many, many great players throughout the course of history that couldn't get out of the second round. Carmelo Anthony couldn't get out of the first. So,
right.
Listen, there's a lot. Your legacy now, because of social media and because of we're always critiquing everything about everybody and putting it out there in the world. Yeah, the players today are very aware of that. Our legacy, my legacy, is going to be based on how far my team gets.
Right.
And sometimes that's not fair. In all sports, sometimes, we bash quarterbacks, and it's like, have you seen the guys around them? But, in the NBA, because there's so few players on the floor at a time, 5 guys on the floor at a time, the super duper star is expected to get you to that next level, whether it's past the second round. Usually, after a guy's retired, well, he didn't win any rings. So there are so many dynamics that go into all of that. Yet, in a case like Donovan Mitchell, as great as he is, because of the way the sports world operates, he's not going to get that respect until his team gets beyond the second round and probably at least to a final.
Sam, that's very interesting to me because based on what we saw last week with the Guardians extending Jose Ramirez, when would the Cavaliers start thinking about maybe doing the same with Donovan Mitchell? I mean, I know he's still under contract, but wouldn't there be a time where they would start thinking about extending him or trying to?
Yeah, that would be probably late next season. That's when you have to start really kind of focusing on it. For now, you've got to maintain your flexibility to build around him.
Okay.
And you don't want to start extending guys when you're in the second apron. You can't. Okay. It's just like we can't put ourselves in this situation for much longer because they've seen how much right now it has limited them, and it's impacting their trade calls now, still even after their other trades. So. There's going to be time enough for that. I don't think either side has any kind of concern. And look, Donovan knows they want to build a team around me, and I want to build that legacy and get out of the second round. Then this is the way it's going to be for right now. And I see he seems perfectly content with that.
Sam Amico, our guest, always breaking it down as only he can. We always appreciate the time, Sam. Keep up the fantastic work at hoopswire.com and give a plug to that TV show you do. You're a TV star as well.
Yeah. Well, I kind of sit there with Booby Gibson and Rafa Hernandez Brito on Full Court Cleveland, which is on FanDuel Sports Network Cleveland. And just about on before every pregame show and after the postgame show.
Great stuff as always, Sam. Thanks so much for clearing things up like that. Enjoy the rest of this week and the trading deadline on Thursday, and we'll talk to you soon, all right?
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. We'll talk to you soon.
Senior NBA writer, hoopswire.com. Follow him on Twitter at Amico Hoops. He is Sam Amico. Interesting stuff from him. We'll break it down even more. We'll get into all the head coaching jobs that are now filled reportedly in the National Football League. Jim Schwartz, may the Schwartz be with you. Well, is it still going to be with everybody in Cleveland? We're waiting on word on that, so stay tuned for more info when we return.
It's Kenny and Jay.